The rain hammered against Valentina Azevedo's car as she waited at a red light in São Paulo. Through the downpour, she spotted a man huddled under an awning, clutching two tiny bundles. Then he looked up, haunted eyes she knew too well. "Miguel?" she whispered. "The husband who vanished 15 years ago. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today." The rain pounded against the windows of Valentina Azevedo's luxury car as she sat at a red light in downtown São Paulo. The city lights blurred through the wet glass, creating halos of color in the early evening darkness. Inside the Mercedes, the soft leather seats and climate control created a cocoon of comfort, isolating her from the harsh weather outside. Valentina checked her diamond watch and sighed. Another late meeting at Beleza Eterna, the cosmetics empire she had built from nothing over the past 15 years. At 45, she was at the height of her power, beautiful, wealthy, and completely alone. "Ms. Azevedo, shall I take the expressway?" "Back to the mansion?" her driver Carlos asked from the front seat. "Yes, I need to review the quarterly reports before tomorrow's board meeting," she replied, already reaching for her tablet. That's when she saw him, through the rain-streaked window. A man huddled under the minimal shelter of a store awning. He was soaking wet, his clothes worn and hanging from his thin frame. But what caught Valentina's attention was what he held against his chest. Two small bundles, which he was desperately trying to shield from the rain with his own body. Something about his posture, the way he stood even while hunched over, struck a chord in her memory. The light turned green. Carlos began to pull away. "Stop the car," Valentina said, her voice barely audible. "Ma'am, stop the car, Carlos, right now." Carlos pulled over to the curb, and before he could ask any questions, Valentina had grabbed her umbrella and stepped out into the downpour. Her designer heels splashed through puddles as she approached the man. As she got closer, her heart began to race. There was something hauntingly familiar about him, the way he held himself, even in despair. When she was just a few feet away, he looked up, sensing her presence. Time stopped. 15 years fell away in an instant. "Miguel?" she whispered, her voice nearly lost in the sound of the rain. The man's eyes widened in shock and recognition. Even with his beard, gaunt face, and the years etched into his features, those eyes were the same. The same eyes that had looked at her with love on their wedding day, the same eyes that had filled with tears the last time she saw him. The day he disappeared from her life without explanation. "Valentina," he said, his voice rough with disuse. "You shouldn't be here." She could barely process his words. Miguel Oliveira, her husband, the love of her life, the man she had spent 5 years searching for before finally giving up, was standing in front of her. The man whose disappearance had driven her to build an empire, filling the void he left with work and ambition. It was then that she noticed the bundles in his arms were moving. She stepped closer and realized they were babies, wrapped in threadbare blankets. Two tiny faces peeked out, their eyes, so like Miguel's, blinking against the rain that occasionally splashed on their cheeks. "Who are they?" she asked, though something deep inside her already knew the answer. Miguel looked down at the infants, then back at Valentina. "They're ours," he said simply. "Your children. Our children." The world tilted beneath Valentina's feet. She reached out to steady herself, gripping Miguel's arm. Through the thin, wet fabric of his shirt, she could feel how thin he had become. "That's impossible," she said. "We never had children. You disappeared 15 years ago." Miguel's face contorted with a pain that went beyond physical suffering. "I never disappeared, Valentina. I was taken." "Taken? By whom? What are you talking about?" "Not here," Miguel said, looking anxiously over his shoulder. "They might still be watching. I've been hiding for months, trying to get back to you." Valentina followed his gaze but saw only streams of people hurrying through the rain, umbrellas bobbing like black mushrooms. "These are our children?" she asked, still struggling to process the information. Miguel nodded. "Gabriel and Sophia, they're twins, 7 months old." Valentina looked at the babies again. Now that she was paying attention, she could see it. Gabriel had her mouth, Sophia had her chin. They both had Miguel's eyes. "How is this possible?" she whispered. "The night I disappeared, I was drugged." And kidnapped. They kept me sedated in a private facility. They told me you were dead. They said it was a car accident. Miguel's voice broke. I tried to escape for years. They used me for experiments. Experiments? Who? Who did this to you? Miguel shook his head. I'll explain everything, but not here. Please, Valentina. The babies are getting cold. We need shelter. Without hesitation, Valentina made her decision. Come with me, my car is right there. Miguel hesitated, his eyes darting around the street. It's not safe for you to be seen with me. I don't care, Valentina said firmly. She gently took one of the babies, Sophia, from his arms. The little girl's eyes, so like her father's, looked up at Valentina with curiosity rather than fear. Something shifted in Valentina's heart, making room for a love she had never known existed. Come, she said again, and this time Miguel followed. Carlos's eyes widened when he saw them approach, but years of professional discretion kept him from commenting as Valentina helped Miguel and the babies into the back seat. Take us to the lake. House, she instructed, not the mansion. And Carlos, not a word of this to anyone, do you understand? Yes, Ms. Azevedo, Carlos replied with a nod. He had been with her long enough to know when something was serious. As the car pulled away from the curb, Valentina noticed Miguel was shivering. She removed her cashmere wrap and draped it around his shoulders. You're freezing, she said, noticing for the first time how pale he was. When did you last eat? Miguel looked away, embarrassed. I've been giving what I can find to the woman who's been helping with the babies, a nurse named Lucia. She's been hiding us in her apartment, but her building manager found out and threatened to call the police. Valentina felt a surge of both gratitude toward this unknown woman and fury at what Miguel had endured. Well, you're with me now. No, one will hurt you or the children again. For the first time, a hint of hope flickered in Miguel's eyes. Then, as if the release of tension was too much for his body to bear, he slumped against the seat, his eyes rolling back. Miguel! Valentina cried out. What's happening, ma'am? Carlos asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. He's passed out. Drive faster, Carlos. We need to get him warm and fed. Valentina held Sophia with one arm while checking Miguel's pulse with her free hand. It was rapid, but weak. The babies remarkably remained calm, as if they somehow understood that they were finally safe. As the car sped through the rainy streets toward the outskirts of the city, Valentina's mind raced. Who would have kidnapped Miguel? Who would have experimented on him? And how, after 15 years, were these babies their biological children? None of it made sense. Yet as she looked down at Sophia's face, at the perfect blend of her own features and Miguel's, she knew it was true. These were her children, and Miguel, despite everything, was still her husband. The gold band on his finger confirmed it. The same ring she had placed there at their wedding 20 years ago. The lake house was a modern structure of glass and stone, secluded on a private plot of land an hour outside the city. Valentina had bought it 5 years ago as a retreat, somewhere to escape the pressures of running Belleza Eterna. Few people knew about it, not her assistant, not the board members, not even her closest friends. Carlos helped carry Miguel inside, while Valentina managed the twins. Once Miguel was settled on the couch, Carlos turned to leave. Carlos, Valentina called. Remember, not a word. Of course, Ms. Azevedo, he replied solemnly. I'll bring groceries and baby supplies tomorrow morning. After he left, Valentina moved quickly, finding dry clothes for Miguel and warm blankets for the babies. She laid the twins on her bed, surrounding them with pillows to keep them from rolling off, then returned to Miguel. His skin was hot too. The touch, a fever. She struggled to remove his wet clothes and dress him in a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt she kept at the house. Despite being unconscious, he was so thin that she managed to move him with relative ease. Once, he was dry and covered with blankets. She returned to the babies. They were awake but quiet, their eyes following her movements. She knew nothing about caring for infants, but she remembered enough from friends' children to check their diapers. They were soaked. What am I going to do with you two? She murmured, gently touching their cheeks. I don't have diapers or formula or anything a baby needs. As if in answer, Sophia reached up and wrapped her tiny hand around Valentina's finger. The simple gesture sent a wave of emotion through Valentina that nearly brought her to her knees. These were her children. Somehow, impossibly, these were her children with Miguel. She improvised diapers from soft dish towels and used warm water to clean them. Then she settled on the bed between them, one hand on each baby's stomach, feeling their breathing, watching over them as they drifted to sleep. Miguel remained unconscious on the couch. Whatever he had been through, it had taken its toll. Valentina knew she should call a doctor, but how could she explain the situation? A missing husband, mysterious babies, talk of kidnapping and experiments. No, for now they would have to manage on their own. Miguel woke with a start in the middle of the night. Valentina, who had been dozing in a chair beside him after checking on the babies, was immediately alert. "Where are the twins?" he asked, panic in his voice. "They're sleeping in the bedroom," she assured him. "They're safe." He relaxed slightly, but still looked around the room with suspicion. "Where are we?" "My lake house. No one knows we're here." She poured him a glass of water from the pitcher on the coffee table. "Drink this. You're dehydrated." He drank deeply, his hands shaking slightly. When he finished, he looked at her with a mixture of relief and trepidation. "I never thought I'd see you again," he said softly. "They told me you were dead. They showed me newspaper articles, a death certificate, even photos of a funeral. Who? Miguel, who did this to you?" Miguel took a deep breath. "Xavier Mendez." Valentina felt as if she'd been struck. Xavier Mendez was one of the wealthiest men in Brazil, the owner of BioNueva, a biotechnology company that was Beleza Eterna's main competitor in anti-aging skincare products. Xavier? But why? What possible reason could he have to take you? Miguel's eyes filled with tears. "Revenge, and to steal what was in my blood." Valentina's confusion must have shown on her face, because Miguel continued, his voice growing stronger as he spoke. "Remember my research at the university? Before I disappeared, I was working on telomere regeneration, a way to potentially slow the aging process at the cellular level. I found something, Valentina, something revolutionary, but I kept it secret, because I wasn't sure about the ethical implications." Valentina nodded slowly. She remembered Miguel's excitement about his research, though the details had always been beyond her understanding. "Xavier found out somehow," Miguel continued. "The night I disappeared, I was leaving the lab late. Someone attacked me from behind. When I woke up, I was in a private facility. They kept me drugged most of the time, taking blood samples, tissue samples." He shuddered at the memory. "For 15 years?" Valentina asked, horrified. "At first, they just wanted my research. But then they discovered something unusual in my blood, a natural mutation that could be the key to cellular regeneration. They kept me to study it, to extract whatever they could from me." Miguel's voice was bitter. "I became their lab rat." "But the babies," Valentina said. "How are they ours?" Miguel looked away, shame written across his face. "They took samples from me. They must have had samples of your DNA too. They created embryos, dozens of them. I found out later they were trying to replicate my mutation to see if it would pass to offspring." Valentina felt sick. "They were creating children as experiments?" Miguel nodded, his expression grim. "I only found out about the twins by accident. One of the nurses, Lucia, took pity on me. She told me Xavier was planning to terminate the project, including all the subjects. She helped me escape with Gabriel and Sophia. And you've been hiding ever since," Valentina finished for him. "Yes, for 7 months. Lucia found us places. To stay brought us food when she could. But last week someone from the facility spotted her. We've been on the run since then." Miguel's eyes filled with tears. "I never thought we'd find you. I was just trying to keep them alive." Valentina moved to sit beside him on the couch, taking his hand in hers. It was thinner than she remembered, the knuckles more pronounced, but the feel of it was achingly familiar. "I searched for you," she said quietly. "For 5 years, I hired private investigators, offered rewards. Eventually, the police told me I had to accept that you were gone." "I'm so sorry," Miguel whispered. "If I had known you were alive, that they were lying to me, I would have fought harder to escape." Valentina leaned her forehead against his. "It doesn't matter now. You're here. The children are here." She pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes. "But Miguel, if what you're saying is true, we're in danger. Xavier Mendez is one of the most powerful men in the country. If he's been doing these things, hiding them all these years, I know, Miguel said grimly. And he won't stop looking for us, for me, and especially for the babies. Their blood contains the same mutation, but in a more stable form. They're what he's been trying to create all these years. A cry came from the bedroom, one of the twins awakening. Miguel moved to stand, but Valentina gently pushed him back down. Rest. I'll get them. She brought both babies out, nestled in her arms. They were awake but calm, their eyes wide as they took in their new surroundings. Miguel's face softened as he looked at them. They're beautiful, aren't they? Despite everything. Despite how they came to be. They're perfect, Valentina said, her voice thick with emotion. She sat beside Miguel and he reached out to take Gabriel, cradling him with the practiced ease of a father who had spent months caring for his child. What do we do now? Valentina asked. Miguel looked at her, determination replacing the fear in his eyes. We fight back. Xavier Mendez took 15 years of our lives. He's not taking anything more. Valentina nodded, a plan already forming in her mind. I have resources now, money, influence, things I didn't have 15 years ago. And I have proof, Miguel said. Lucia helped me get copies of files before we escaped. Records of what they did to me, to others like me. Evidence of the embryo experiments. For the first time, Valentina felt a glimmer of hope. They weren't helpless victims anymore. They had each other and they had the truth. As dawn broke over the lake, casting golden light through the windows, Valentina and Miguel sat side by side, their children in their arms. They had spent the night piecing together the fragments of their shattered past, and now they faced the future, uncertain and dangerous, but together. We should sleep, Valentina said, noticing the exhaustion in Miguel's face. We have a lot to do when we wake up. Miguel nodded, but his eyes remained on her face as if he was afraid she might disappear if he looked away. I never stopped loving you, he said softly. Even when I thought you were gone, I held on to that love. It was the only thing that kept me sane. Valentina felt tears prick her eyes. I built an empire trying to fill the hole you left, she admitted, but nothing ever did. As they moved to the bedroom, laying the babies between them on the large bed, Valentina knew their ordeal was far from over. Xavier Mendez would be searching for them. Their lives would never be completely safe until he was exposed and brought to justice. But for now, in this moment, they had found each other again. Against impossible odds, the family that had been torn apart was reunited, and Valentina made a silent vow as she watched Miguel and their children drift off to sleep. No one would separate them again. Not Xavier, not anyone. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The next morning, Valentina woke to the unfamiliar sound of a baby's cry. For a moment, she was disoriented, unsure of where she was or why there would be a child nearby. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back, finding Miguel in the rain, the twins, the horrifying story of kidnapping and experiments. She turned to see Miguel already awake, gently rocking Sophia in his arms while Gabriel continued to fuss on the bed between them. He's hungry, Miguel explained, his voice rough with sleep. They both are. They usually have formula around this time. Valentina sat up and carefully lifted Gabriel into her arms. The baby continued to cry, his little face reddening with the effort. Though she had never held a baby until yesterday, Valentina found herself naturally swaying, trying to soothe him. Carlos should be here soon with supplies, she said. I asked him to bring formula, diapers, everything we need. As if on cue, they heard the sound of a car approaching outside. Miguel tensed immediately, his body language shifting from tired father to alert protector in an instant. It's just Carlos, Valentina assured him, but she noticed how Miguel positioned himself between the bedroom door and the babies. 15 years of captivity had left deep scars. A knock came at the front door. Valentina handed Gabriel back to Miguel and went to answer it, pausing to check through the peephole first. Relief washed over her when she saw Carlos's familiar face. She opened the door to find her driver loaded down with bags. I got everything on your list, Ms. Azevedo, he said, stepping inside and setting the packages on the kitchen counter. Formula, diapers, clothes for the little ones, and food for you, and he hesitated, glancing toward the bedroom. "Thank you, Carlos," Valentina said. "You've been a tremendous help." Carlos nodded, but his expression remained serious. "Ms. Azevedo, forgive me for speaking freely, but I'm concerned. You didn't come to your office today. Your assistant has called me twice already asking about your whereabouts." Valentina frowned. She had completely forgotten about work, about the board meeting scheduled for that morning. For the first time in 15 years, Belleza Eterna wasn't her primary concern. "What? Did you tell her that you were feeling unwell and needed a day of rest?" "I said you'd call when you felt better." Carlos paused. "But there's something else. On my way here, I noticed a black SUV parked about a kilometer down the road. When I drove past, it pulled out and followed me for a while before turning around." Valentina felt a chill run down her spine. "Did you see who was inside?" Carlos shook his head. The windows were tinted, but it seemed professional, not just someone who happened to be in the area. Miguel appeared in the doorway of the bedroom, still holding both babies. His face had gone pale. "They've found us already," he said quietly. "We need to leave." Valentina turned to Carlos. "We need your help again. Can you get us out of here without being seen?" Carlos nodded without hesitation. "There's a service road behind the property that connects to the old highway. It's not on most maps. We can take my personal car. It's less recognizable than your Mercedes." "Thank you," Valentina said, gratitude evident in her voice. "I won't. Forget this." Carlos smiled slightly. "I've worked for you for 10 years, Ms. Azevedo. You've always been fair to me. Besides," he added, glancing at the twins, "those little ones deserve a chance." As Carlos went to move his car to the back of the house, Valentina and Miguel worked quickly, preparing bottles for the babies and gathering the supplies they'd need. Valentina packed a bag with the cash she kept at the lake house, enough to sustain them for several weeks if necessary. "Where will we go?" Miguel asked as he fed Gabriel, the baby eagerly sucking on the bottle. Valentina thought for a moment. "I have a property in the countryside near Paraty. It's registered under a holding company, not my name. Few people know about it." Miguel nodded. "But we can't keep running forever." "No," Valentina agreed. "We need to expose Xavier. You said you have evidence?" Miguel gestured to the worn backpack he'd had with him when Valentina found him. "It's all in there. Files, data records, even blood samples labeled with identification numbers. Lucia risked everything to get these for me." "This Lucia," Valentina said carefully, trying to ignore the twinge of jealousy she felt. "She's still in danger too, isn't she?" Miguel's expression grew solemn. "Xavier will assume she helped me escape. If they've found her..." He couldn't finish the sentence. "Do you know where she is?" "She was staying with her sister in Copacabana, but after they spotted her, she said she would go somewhere they wouldn't think to look." Miguel sighed. "She wouldn't tell me where. She said it was safer if I didn't." "No." Valentina made a decision. "Once we're safe, we'll find her. We owe her that much." Miguel looked at Valentina with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. "You've changed," he said softly. 15 years will do that," she replied with a sad smile. "I had to become stronger after you disappeared. I built Belleza Eterna from nothing, fought my way into an industry dominated by men. I learned to be ruthless when necessary. We're going to need that strength," Miguel said. "Xavier Mendez has connections everywhere. Politics, law enforcement, media. That's how he's been able to hide his experiments for so long." "I have connections too," Valentina countered, "and resources he doesn't know about." Carlos returned, informing them that his car was ready at the back door. They quickly loaded their meager belongings and the babies, then set off down the narrow service road, the car bumping over uneven ground until they reached the old highway. As they drove, away from the lake house, Valentina looked back one last time. She had a feeling it would be a long time before she returned, if ever. The countryside property near Paraty was a colonial-era farmhouse, restored but retaining its original charm. Set on 20 acres of land with fruit orchards and a small coffee plantation, it was self-sufficient and isolated, perfect for a family in hiding. Carlos dropped them off with promises to return in a few days with more supplies. Before he left, Valentina handed him an envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "The deed to an apartment in Rio," she said. "It's yours now, and enough money to ensure you never have to work as a driver again." Carlos tried to refuse, but Valentina was insistent. "You've put yourself at risk for us. This is the least I can do to thank you." After Carlos left, Valentina and Miguel settled into a strange domestic routine. For Miguel, caring for the twins was second nature after months of being their sole caretaker. Valentina, however, found herself learning the basics of childcare at 45, how to change a diaper, how to burp a baby after feeding, how to tell from their different cries what they needed. In the quiet moments, when the babies were napping, Valentina and Miguel sat together on the veranda, looking out over the rolling hills. They talked about the years they had lost, filling in the gaps of their separate lives. "When did you start Belleza Eterna?" Miguel asked. Valentina smiled at the memory. "About 3 years after you disappeared. I was working at that small cosmetics shop, remember? The owner wanted to retire and I used our savings to buy it." Miguel winced at the mention of our savings, money they had been putting aside for a future that was stolen from them. "I started creating my own formulas," Valentina continued. "Simple things at first, face creams, body lotions. But then I developed a night cream that became popular with our customers. Word spread and soon we couldn't keep it in stock. That's when I decided to expand." "And now you're one of the most successful businesswomen in Brazil," Miguel said with pride. Valentina shrugged. The business filled the void. I had nothing else. Miguel reached across the table to take her hand. "I'm so sorry, Valentina. If I had known—" "It wasn't your fault," she interrupted. "You were a victim too." They sat in silence for a moment, both contemplating the years they had lost. Finally, Valentina spoke again. "Tell me about them," she said, nodding toward the nursery where the twins slept. "What are they like?" Miguel's face softened. "Gabriel is the serious one. He watches everything, takes it all in, and he's determined. If he wants something, he won't give up until he gets it." Miguel smiled. "He reminds me of you that way." Valentina felt a rush of emotion at the comparison. "Sophia is different," Miguel continued. "She's all curiosity and joy. She laughs all the time. Even with everything we've been through, nothing seems to dim her spirit." His voice broke slightly. "I don't know how I would have survived without them. Caring for them gave me purpose when I had nothing else." Valentina squeezed his hand. "You're a wonderful father. And you'll be a wonderful mother," Miguel assured her. "You already are. They've bonded with you so quickly." "It's strange," Valentina admitted. "I never thought I wanted children. After you disappeared, the idea of starting a family with someone else was unthinkable. But now with them it feels right. Like they were always meant to be ours despite the circumstances of their creation." Miguel nodded in understanding. "I felt the same way the first time I held them. Whatever Xavier's intentions were in creating them, they're not experiments. They're our children." Later that night, after the twins were asleep, Valentina and Miguel spread the evidence from Miguel's backpack across the dining table. The files were comprehensive. Detailed records of the procedures performed on Miguel, blood test results, genetic analyses, and most disturbing of all, documentation of the embryo creation process. "There were 50 embryos initially," Miguel explained, pointing to a spreadsheet. "They implanted them in artificial wombs, some new technology Xavier's company developed. Only 10 developed past the first trimester. Of those, Gabriel and Sophia were the only ones to reach full term with the genetic markers they were looking for." Valentina felt sick at the clinical way their children's creation was documented. "What happened to the other embryos?" Miguel's expression darkened. "They were terminated once they proved unsuitable for the research. And what exactly was Xavier trying to achieve?" "You mentioned a mutation in your blood." Miguel pulled out a medical report. "It's a natural genetic variation that affects telomere regeneration. Telomeres are like protective caps at the end of DNA strands. They get shorter each time a cell divides, which is part of why we age. My mutation causes my telomeres to degrade much more slowly than normal." So, you age more slowly? Valentina asked, trying to understand. Theoretically, yes. Xavier's researchers estimated my biological aging process is about 30% slower than average. It's not immortality, just extended youth and health. Miguel ran a hand through his hair. The irony is the stress of captivity probably negated any benefit. I've aged more in the past 15 years than I should have in 20. Valentina examined the medical charts. And the twins have this same mutation? Yes, but in a more stable form. The researchers found a way to enhance the effect through some kind of genetic modification. Miguel's voice was bitter. That's why Xavier won't stop looking for them. They're his fountain of youth, the key to an anti-aging treatment worth billions. And that's why he targeted you initially? He knew about this mutation? Miguel nodded. I discovered it accidentally during my research at the university. I was studying genetic factors in longevity when I analyzed my own DNA as a control sample. When I realized what I'd found, I kept it quiet. I wanted to understand it fully before publishing anything. But somehow Xavier found out. I think there was a spy in my lab. One of my research assistants disappeared around the same time I did. I saw him once at the facility where they kept me. Valentina began organizing the files, her business mind taking over. We need to be strategic about how we use this evidence. Xavier has too much influence for us to simply go to the police. What do you suggest? Miguel asked. We need allies, powerful ones. Valentina thought for a moment. I know a journalist. Fad Globo News, Carolina Freitas. She's built her career on exposing corporate corruption. And I have a friend in the federal police who doesn't bow to political pressure. Miguel looked skeptical. How can we trust them? Xavier has people everywhere. We start small, provide bits of information, see how they react. Valentina tapped the files. We also need to make copies of everything and store them in different locations. If anything happens to us, the truth still needs to come out. For the twins, Miguel said softly. For the twins, Valentina agreed. And for us, and for everyone else Xavier has hurt through his experiments. As they worked late into the night, organizing the evidence and formulating a plan, Valentina found herself watching Miguel. Despite everything he had endured, despite the years of captivity and the haunted look that sometimes came into his eyes, he was still essentially the same man she had fallen in love with, brilliant, compassionate, determined. The love she had, buried deep within her heart after years of searching for him, was resurfacing, stronger than before. But there was also something new, a fierce protectiveness toward him and their children. Valentina had spent 15 years building her business empire. Now she would use every resource, every connection, every skill she had developed to protect her family and bring down the man who had torn them apart. 3 days passed in relative peace at the farmhouse. Valentina and Miguel fell into a routine with the twins, taking turns for night feedings and settling into a strange but comfortable domesticity. In quiet moments, they continued to plan their strategy against Xavier, making lists of potential allies and the order in which they would approach them. On the 4th day, Carlos arrived with more supplies and news that sent a chill through both of them. There was a break-in at the lake house, he reported. Nothing was taken, but the place was searched thoroughly. And there's more. Someone has been asking questions at Belleza Eterna, a man claiming to be from a regulatory agency, wanting to know your whereabouts. Did he give a name? Miguel asked tensely. Dr. Rodrigo Santos, Carlos said. He had identification, but your assistant thought something seemed off about him. Miguel's face went pale. Rodrigo Santos was one of the lead researchers at the facility. He was directly under Xavier's supervision. Valentina's mind raced. They're closing in. We need to move faster with our plan. There's one more thing, Carlos said hesitantly. I think I found Lucia. Miguel stood up abruptly. Where? Is she safe? She's at the Santa Maria Hospital in Rio. She was admitted 2 days ago after being found unconscious in an alley. The police report says it was a mugging, but we know better, Valentina finished grimly. They found her. Miguel was already moving, gathering his jacket. I need to go to her. She saved my life, saved our children. I can't leave her, alone. It's too dangerous, Valentina argued. That's exactly what they expect you to do. I can't abandon her. Miguel's voice was anguished. She risked everything for us. Valentina saw the determination in his eyes and knew there would be no changing his mind. Then we go together, she decided. But we need a plan. We can't just walk into the hospital, they'll be watching. I have an idea, Carlos offered. My cousin works as an orderly at Santa Maria. He can help get you in through the staff entrance. And I know someone who can watch the twins for a few hours. My sister. She has 3 children of her own and lives in a small village no one would think to look in. Valentina hesitated, reluctant to leave the babies with someone she didn't know. But Miguel placed a gentle hand on her arm. We can trust Carlos, he said softly, and we need to help Lucia. She knows things about Xavier's operation that aren't in the files. Names, dates, connections to government officials. If we lose her... All right, Valentina conceded. But we go in, check on her condition, and get out. No heroics, no extended visits. Miguel nodded in agreement, though the worry lines around his eyes remained deep. As they prepared to leave, Valentina found herself lingering over the twins' crib, watching them sleep. They looked so peaceful, so unaware of the danger surrounding them. She gently touched each of their cheeks, making a silent promise to return to them, to keep them safe no matter what. Miguel came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. They'll be okay, he whispered. Carlos's sister will take good care of them. Valentina leaned back against him, drawing strength from his presence. When does it end, Miguel? How long do we have to live in fear? Until Xavier is exposed and behind bars, he answered simply. And we're going to make that happen, starting today with Lucia. Valentina turned in his arms to face him. I never thought I'd see you again, she said softly. Now that I have you back, I can't lose you. I can't lose any of you. Miguel cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle. You won't, he promised. We've already endured 15 years apart. The universe owes us the rest of our lives together. Their foreheads touched, a moment of connection and shared resolve. Then, with one last look at their sleeping children, they prepared to face the dangers that awaited them in Rio. The plan to enter Santa Maria Hospital undetected worked smoothly thanks to Carlos's cousin. Dressed in hospital scrubs and with fake ID badges, Valentina and Miguel made their way to the 3rd floor where Lucia was being treated. The hallway outside her room was empty except for a uniformed police officer sitting on a chair near the door, apparently half asleep. Miguel and Valentina approached with the confident stride of medical professionals, nodding to the officer as they entered the room. Inside, the woman lying on the hospital bed was barely recognizable as the same person in the photo Miguel had shown Valentina. Lucia's face was swollen and bruised, one eye completely shut. Various tubes connected her to monitoring equipment, and her breathing was shallow. Miguel rushed to her side, taking her hand gently in his. Lucia, he whispered, it's Miguel. Can you hear me? Her uninjured eye fluttered open, widening in recognition, and then fear. You shouldn't be here, she rasped, her voice barely audible. They're watching. Who did this to you? Valentina asked, moving to the other side of the bed. Lucia's gaze shifted to Valentina. A small, pained smile touched her lips. You found her, she said to Miguel. You found Valentina. Yes, Miguel confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. And the twins are safe. We're all safe, thanks to you. Not for long, Lucia warned. Xavier knows you escaped with the babies. He's desperate to find them. The formula isn't working without their genetic material. What formula? Valentina asked. The anti-aging treatment, Lucia explained weakly. They've developed a preliminary version, but it's unstable. The test subjects are experiencing severe side effects. They need the twins' stem cells to stabilize it. Miguel's face hardened. They'll never get their hands on Gabriel and Sophia, never. Lucia squeezed his hand with what little strength she had. There's something else you need to know. Xavier has scheduled a press conference for next week. He's going to announce a breakthrough in anti-aging technology, using your research, Miguel. He's going to take credit for everything you discovered. Let him, Valentina said dismissively. We have evidence of what he really did. Lucia shook her head, wincing at the movement. You don't understand. Once he makes the announcement, goes public with the preliminary results, he'll have too much momentum behind him. Investors, government support, media attention. It will be much harder to expose him then. Miguel looked at Valentina, alarm clear in his eyes. She's right. We need to act before the press conference. We will, Valentina assured him, already formulating a new plan. But first we need to get Lucia somewhere safe. They'll come back to finish what they started. As if on cue, they heard voices in the hallway, men speaking in low, urgent tones. Through the small window in the door, Valentina caught sight of two men in suits talking to the police officer, who was now fully awake and nodding toward Lucia's room. They're here, she hissed. Miguel looked around frantically for an escape. Route? There was a window, but they were 3 floors up. The bathroom was too small to hide in effectively. Valentina's mind worked quickly. The bed next to Lucia's is empty. Get under it, she instructed Miguel. I'll handle this. What? No, I'm not leaving you to face them alone, Miguel protested. I'm not the one they're looking for, Valentina pointed out. Now get under that. Bed quickly. Reluctantly, Miguel did as she asked, sliding under the empty hospital bed just as the door opened. 2 men entered, one tall and thin with cold eyes, the other stocky with a face that seemed permanently set in a scowl. Can I help you, gentlemen? Valentina asked, adopting the authoritative tone she used in board meetings. The taller man looked surprised to find someone in the room. We're here to check on the patient. Who are you? Valentina drew herself up to her full height. Dr. Elena Santos, Chief of Neurology. And you are? The men exchanged glances. Federal Police, the stocky one said, though neither made a move to show identification. We need to speak with Ms. Pereira alone. I'm afraid that's not possible, Valentina said firmly. Ms. Pereira has suffered severe head trauma and is heavily sedated. She's in no condition for questioning. This is a matter of national security, the tall man insisted, taking a step forward. Valentina stood her ground. And this is a hospital. My patient's health comes first. You can come back when she's stable. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to check her vitals. The men hesitated, clearly unused to being challenged. The tall one opened his mouth to argue further when a commotion erupted in the hallway. Several real doctors and nurses rushed past the door, responding to some emergency. Taking advantage of the distraction, Valentina pressed the call button by Lucia's bed repeatedly. Within seconds, a nurse appeared at the door. Dr. Santos, is everything all right? Valentina turned to the nurse with a concerned expression. No, our patient is showing signs of increased intracranial pressure. We need to get her to imaging immediately. And these men were just leaving, she added pointedly. The nurse nodded and began preparing Lucia for transport. The 2 men now, faced with multiple witnesses, had no choice but to back down. We'll return later, the tall one said, his tone making it clear it was a threat rather than a promise. I'll be sure to inform hospital security to expect you, Valentina replied coolly. They can verify your credentials then. The men left, their body language tense with suppressed anger. Once they were gone, Miguel emerged from under the bed, looking at Valentina with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. That was incredible, he said. You didn't even flinch. Valentina's composure finally broke and she let out a shaky breath. Believe me, I was terrified, but we don't have time for fear right now. We need to get Lucia out of here before they come back with real police or hospital administration. The nurse, who had been watching this exchange with confusion, spoke up. What's really going on here? Miguel looked at her pleadingly. Those men aren't police. They're working for someone who wants to harm Lucia and us. Please, can you help us? The nurse hesitated, clearly torn between her duty to follow hospital protocol and her instinct to help. Finally, she nodded. My brother has an ambulance service. We can transfer her to another facility, but you'll need proper medical care for her. I know someone, Valentina said. A doctor who runs a private clinic in Niterói. He owes me a favor. As they finalized their impromptu plan, Lucia reached for Miguel's hand again. The flash drive, she whispered, in my personal belongings. There's more evidence on it, things I couldn't get in hard copy. Names of government officials involved with Xavier, Bank transfers, dates of illegal experiments. Miguel squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you, Lucia, for everything. We're going to make this right." Lucia's eye drifted closed, the effort of speaking, having exhausted her. But before she slipped into unconsciousness, she murmured one last warning. "Be careful. Xavier is more dangerous than you know. He's not just after the twins for the formula. There's something else, something about the mutation, something he needs them for." And with that cryptic message hanging in the air, Lucia fell silent, leaving Miguel and Valentina to wonder what other secrets Xavier Mendez was hiding, and what else he might be willing to do to keep those secrets safe. The journey back to the farmhouse was tense. Valentina sat in the back of Carlos's car with Miguel, both of them silent, processing everything they had learned from Lucia. The flash drive she had given them felt like it weighed 100 pounds in Miguel's pocket. More evidence of Xavier's crimes, but also more danger for anyone who possessed it. "What did Lucia mean?" Valentina finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "About Xavier wanting the twins for something beyond the formula?" Miguel shook his head, frustration evident in his expression. "I don't know. During my time in captivity, I overheard fragments of conversations, but nothing specific about secondary research objectives. Whatever it is, it can't be good," Valentina said, her hand finding Miguel's in the darkness of the car. "We need to look at what's on that flash drive as soon as possible." When they arrived at the farmhouse, Carlos's sister, Maria, greeted them with a tired smile. The twins were asleep in the portable cribs Carlos had brought earlier. "They were angels," Maria assured them. Gabriel fussed a bit before bed, but Sophia cooed until he settled down. Valentina felt a rush of warmth at this small detail about her children, the way Sophia seemed to comfort her brother. It was another piece of who they were, these little people she was just getting to know, after Maria and Carlos left, promising to check on Lucia at the private clinic where they had taken her. Valentina and Miguel sat at the dining table with a laptop between them. The flash drive contained dozens of files, emails, financial records, research, notes, and most disturbing of all, video recordings. They spent hours going through the material, the horror of Xavier's operation becoming clearer with each file they opened. It wasn't just Miguel who had been held captive, there were others, at least a dozen, all with various genetic anomalies that Xavier's researchers were studying. "Look at this," Miguel said, pointing to a spreadsheet. "Financial transfers to government officials, judges, even a police commissioner. This is how he's kept everything quiet all these years." Valentina nodded grimly, making notes of names and dates. "And this email chain, he's been in contact with pharmaceutical companies around the world, promising a breakthrough. There are billions of dollars at stake." They continued their review until they came to a video file titled simply Project Genesis. Miguel hesitated before clicking on it, a sense of dread filling him. The video showed a sterile laboratory with a row of what looked like large incubators, the artificial wombs Miguel had mentioned. A team of scientists in white coats moved. Among them, checking monitors and making notes. The camera zoomed in on one of the incubators, showing a tiny fetus floating in clear fluid, attached to various tubes and sensors. Subject 37 continues to develop normally, a voice narrated off-camera. Genetic markers for longevity are present and stable. Cognitive enhancement indicators are also positive. "Cognitive enhancement?" Valentina repeated, looking at Miguel in confusion. They continued watching as the video cut to another scene, AAE's meeting room where Xavier Mendez himself sat at the head of a long table. He was exactly as Valentina remembered him from industry events, tall, distinguished, with silver hair and the confident demeanor of a man accustomed to power. "Phase 1 of Project Genesis has exceeded expectations," Xavier was saying to the group of serious-faced individuals around the table. "The embryos containing both the longevity gene and the cognitive enhancement modifications are developing as predicted. If successful, we will have created the first generation of humans with dramatically extended lifespans and superior intellectual capabilities." "And the original subject?" someone asked from around the table. Xavier's expression turned dismissive. "Subject 0 has served his purpose. His genetic material has been fully mapped and replicated. Once the viable offspring are delivered and stabilized, he will be disposed of. Valentina gasped, her hand clutching Miguel's arm. He was planning to kill you once the babies were born. Miguel's face was ashen, but not surprised. I suspected as much. Lucia warned me they were planning to terminate me around the time. She helped me escape. They continued watching as Xavier outlined his vision, a future where his company controlled the key to extended human life and enhanced intelligence, starting with the twins. Gabriel and Sophia weren't just experiments to him. They were prototypes for a new kind of human being, one that Xavier intended to patent and control. "This is monstrous," Valentina whispered as the video ended. "He's not just after an anti-aging formula. He wants to control human evolution itself." Miguel closed the laptop, unable to watch anymore. "And our children are at the center of it all." Valentina stood up and began pacing the room, her business mind already shifting to strategy mode. "We have enough evidence now to destroy Xavier. Completely. We need to act before his press conference." "Who do we trust with this?" Miguel asked. "Xavier has people everywhere." Valentina thought for a moment. "We start with my contact at Globo News, Carolina Freitas. She's incorruptible and has the platform to make this public quickly. And my friend in the federal police, Daniel Almeida. He's high enough in the chain of command to bypass the corrupted officials Xavier has bought. And if they're compromised, too?" Valentina stopped pacing and looked at Miguel directly. "Then we go directly to the public. I'll use Belleza Eterna's platforms. We have millions of followers across social media. Xavier can't silence everyone." Miguel nodded, but his expression remained troubled. "Even with all this evidence, Xavier is powerful. He'll fight back. He might even try to discredit you, claim that you're trying to sabotage a competitor." "Let him try," Valentina said with determination. "I've spent 15 years building my reputation in this industry. People trust Belleza Eterna and they trust me." As they finalized their plan, a cry came from the nursery, one of the twins awakening for a late-night feeding. Miguel rose automatically to tend to them, and Valentina followed. They found both babies awake, Sophia gurgling happily, while Gabriel's face was scrunched up in hunger. As they fed the twins together, sitting side by side on the small couch in the nursery, Valentina felt a moment of clarity. Everything in her life, the loss of Miguel, the years of building her company, even the loneliness she had tried to fill with work, had led to this moment, to these children, to this fight. "We're going to win this," she said softly to Miguel. "For them." Miguel looked up from Gabriel, who was eagerly drinking his formula, and met Valentina's gaze. "For all of us," he agreed. The next morning, Valentina called Carolina Freitas, arranging to meet at a small cafe in a nearby town. She was careful not to say too much over the phone, knowing that Xavier might have the means to monitor calls. Just, Valentina instructed Miguel as she prepared to leave. "Carlos will stay here with you and the twins. The fewer people seen with me, the better." Miguel wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. His face was potentially recognizable to Xavier's. People, while Valentina could move more freely. Besides, someone needed to stay with the twins. Before she left, Valentina knelt beside the twins, who were playing on a blanket on the living room floor. She touched each of their cheeks, memorizing their perfect features. "I'll be back soon," she promised them, though they were too young to understand. Then she turned to Miguel, who stood watching her with concern etched on his face. "Be careful," he said, pulling her into an embrace. "If anything feels wrong, anything at all, don't go through with the meeting." Valentina nodded against his chest, drawing strength from his warmth. "I'll be back before dark," she promised. Then, standing on her tiptoes, she kissed him. A brief, tender moment that carried 15 years of longing. The drive to the cafe took about an hour, giving Valentina time to rehearse what she would say to Carolina. The journalist had built her career on exposing corporate wrongdoing, but what Xavier had done went far beyond normal corporate crimes. It was the stuff of science fiction nightmares. The cafe was a small, unassuming place on a side street, the kind of establishment tourists never found. Valentina arrived early and chose a table in the back corner with a clear view of the entrance. She ordered a coffee and waited. scanning each person who entered with cautious eyes. Carolina arrived exactly on time, looking much as Valentina remembered. Her sharp-eyed, no-nonsense, with a notebook in hand and an air of perpetual skepticism. She spotted Valentina immediately and made her way to the table. "This is mysterious even for you," Carolina said as she sat down. "What's so urgent that we needed to meet in person, in this out-of-the-way place?" "Before I explain," Valentina said quietly, "I need to know something. If I tell you a story that involves one of the most powerful men in Brazil, a man with government connections and billions at stake, will you have the courage to publish it, regardless of the pressure you'll face?" Carolina's eyebrows rose, but her expression remained steady. "You know my track record, Valentina. I don't bow to pressure, not even when they threaten my job or my safety." Valentina studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I believe you." "What?" "I'm about to tell you will sound unbelievable at first, but I have evidence, extensive evidence, to back up every part of it." Over the next hour, Valentina laid out the entire story. Miguel's kidnapping, the years of captivity, the experiments, the creation of the twins, and Xavier's plans to announce a breakthrough based on stolen research and unethical practices. To her credit, Carolina listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly grave as the story unfolded. When Valentina finally finished, Carolina closed her notebook and leaned forward. "If even half of what you've told me is true, this is beyond anything I've ever covered," she said quietly. "We're talking about human experimentation, kidnapping, corporate espionage on a massive scale. Xavier Mendez could go to prison for the rest of his life." "It's all true," Valentina assured her. "And I can prove it." She slid a small envelope across the table. "This is a copy of the flash drive containing all the evidence. Video recordings, financial records, medical files, everything you need to verify my story." Carolina took the envelope, her hand steady despite the weight of what she was being given. "I'll need to authenticate all of this. It will take time." "We don't have much time," Valentina warned. "Xavier is holding a press conference in 3 days to announce his breakthrough. Once that happens, it will be harder to stop him. The media, investors, everyone will be caught up in the excitement of a potential anti-aging treatment." "I understand," Carolina said, slipping the envelope into her bag. "I'll work quickly. And Valentina," she added, her tone softening slightly, "where are you staying?" "I'll need to contact you as I verify things." Valentina hesitated, unwilling to reveal their location. "I'll contact you," she said instead, "each evening at 8. Use this." She handed Carolina a prepaid phone. "It's safer this way." Carolina didn't argue, understanding the precaution. "One more thing," she said as they prepared to leave. "Are you sure Xavier doesn't know you're involved yet? That you found Miguel and the twins?" "I'm not sure of anything," Valentina admitted. "But I've been careful. I haven't been to my office, haven't used my credit cards or phone. As far as most people know, I'm taking a well-deserved vacation after 15 years of non-stop work." Carolina nodded, but her expression was somber. "Be extra careful. Men like Xavier Mendez don't get where they are by being careless or forgiving. If he suspects you're a threat to him, he'll come after you with everything he has." "I know," Valentina said quietly. "That's why we need to expose him quickly before he can silence us." They parted ways, Carolina heading back to the city to begin authenticating the evidence, Valentina returning to the farmhouse where Miguel and the twins waited. As she drove, Valentina felt a mix of hope and apprehension. The first step of their plan was in motion. Now they could only wait and see if Carolina would come through for them. Valentina returned to the farmhouse to find Miguel pacing anxiously in the living room, his face tight with worry. "What happened?" she asked immediately, sensing something was wrong. "Carlos got a call from his cousin at the hospital," Miguel explained. "The men who came looking for Lucia have been asking questions about us, showing your picture to hospital staff, describing me. They know we were there." Valentina's heart sank. "They've connected us." Miguel nodded grimly. "It was bound to happen, eventually. The question is, how quickly can they trace us here?" "We need to move again," Valentina decided. "Tomorrow morning. I know a place in the mountains near Petropolis, a hunting lodge owned by a shell company that's 3 layers removed from my name. They won't find it easily. Miguel rubbed his face tiredly. More running. The twins need stability, Valentina. I know, she said softly, placing a hand on his arm. But they need safety more. It won't be for long. Carolina has the evidence now. Once she authenticates it and prepares her story, Xavier will be too busy fighting for his own survival to come after us. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Valentina and Miguel sat on the veranda, watching the stars emerge in the clear country sky. Despite the danger hanging over them, there was a sense of peace in the moment. A quiet interlude in the storm they were weathering together. "Do you remember our first apartment?" Miguel asked suddenly, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "That tiny place with the window that wouldn't close properly?" Valentina laughed softly at the memory. "And the neighbor who played tango music at 3 in the morning. Yes, I remember, we were so young and so happy," Miguel added, his voice wistful. "We had nothing but each other, and it was enough." Valentina leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "We'll have that again," she promised. "A home, safety, a normal life for the twins." Miguel wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "What about Belleza Eterna, your company, your life's work?" "It's just a company," Valentina said, surprising herself with how easily the words came. "For 15 years it was everything to me because I had nothing else, but now," she thought of the twins sleeping inside, Dove Miguel beside her. "Now I have a family. That's what matters." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, until the ringing of the prepaid phone Valentina had kept shattered the peace. She answered it quickly, hoping for good news from Carolina. Instead, the journalist's voice was tense, urgent. "Valentina, are you somewhere safe?" "Yes, why? What's happening?" "I've been authenticating the evidence you gave me," Carolina explained. "It's all solid. The financial records, the medical files, even the video. It's enough to destroy Xavier 10 times over." "That's good news, isn't it?" Valentina asked, confused by Carolina's tone. "It would be, except for what happened an hour ago. My apartment was broken into. My laptop and all my notes were taken. The only reason they didn't get the flash drive is because I had it with me at the station." Valentina felt a chill run down her spine. "Xavier knows. That's not all," Carolina continued. "My editor received a call from Xavier Mendez himself, threatening a lawsuit that would bankrupt the network if we ran any story questioning his research or business practices. And there's more. Xavier has moved up his press conference. It's happening tomorrow at noon, not 3 days from now." "He's accelerating his plans," Valentina realized aloud, her mind racing. "He knows we're trying to expose him, so he's moving faster." "Exactly," Carolina confirmed. "I'm still going to run the story, but it won't be ready until the evening news. By then, Xavier will have already made his announcement. The damage will be harder to undo." "What if we confront him directly?" Miguel suggested, having heard enough of the conversation to understand the situation. At the press conference itself, Carolina was silent for a moment, considering it would be incredibly risky. Xavier will have security, possibly police officers he's bought, and every media outlet in the country will be there. "That's what we want," Valentina said, the plan forming in her mind. "Witnesses, cameras, a public confrontation that Xavier can't control or hide." "You're talking about walking into the lion's den," Carolina warned. "We're already in the lion's den," Miguel pointed out. "At least this way, we choose the time and place of the confrontation." After further discussion, they formed a plan. Carolina would help them gain access to the press conference, which was being held at Bionueva's headquarters in Rio. Meanwhile, she would continue preparing her exposé for the evening news, a backup plan if the confrontation didn't go as hoped. When the call ended, Valentina turned to Miguel, her expression resolute. "Are we really doing this? Walking straight into Xavier's territory?" Miguel took her hands in his. "It's a risk, but it might be our best chance. If we can expose him in front of the world's media, he won't be able to silence us all." "What about the twins?" Valentina asked, her greatest fear giving voice to itself. "If something happens to us, Carlos and Maria will take them somewhere safe," Miguel said, though the pain in his eyes revealed how difficult the thought was for him. "If the worst happens, the evidence Carolina has will eventually come to light. The twins will be protected." and they'll know the truth about us, that we fought for them. Valentina felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. This was not the time for weakness. We should rest, she said. Tomorrow will be the fight of our lives. Before they went inside, Miguel pulled Valentina close, his arms encircling her with a protective strength that belied his still thin frame. Whatever happens tomorrow, he whispered against her hair, know that finding you again has made everything worth it. Even the years of captivity, even the pain, all of it led me back to you. Valentina's throat tightened with emotion. We're going to win this, she said fiercely, clinging to him. We're going to win, and then we're going to have the life that was stolen from us. That night, they slept with the twins between them on the bed, creating a protective circle around their children. Neither spoke of the fear that tomorrow might be their last day together. Instead, they memorized every detail, the way Sophia's tiny hand curled around her father's finger, the peaceful expression on Gabriel's face as he dreamed, the perfect completeness of their family, so recently found, so fiercely loved. The Bio Nueva headquarters in Rio was an imposing glass and steel structure that dominated the skyline of the business district. News vans lined the street outside, and a crowd of reporters, photographers, and curious onlookers gathered at the entrance, waiting to be admitted to what had been billed as a historic announcement. Valentina and Miguel arrived separately from Carolina, keeping their distance to avoid drawing attention prematurely. They were dressed professionally but inconspicuously, Valentina in a simple dark suit, rather than her usual designer attire, Miguel in borrowed clothes that fit his thin frame well enough to pass inspection. They had said their goodbyes to the twins at dawn, leaving them in the care of Maria, who had taken them to her village home far from the city. The parting had been heart-wrenching but necessary. Whatever happened today, Gabriel and Sophia needed to be safe. Ready? Valentina asked as they approached the security checkpoint at the entrance. Miguel nodded, his face set in determination. As ready as I'll ever be. Carolina was waiting just inside, press credentials around her neck. As planned, she intercepted a junior staff member and spoke authoritatively about the additional guests who needed access. The young woman, overwhelmed by the chaos of the event and intimidated by Carolina's confident manner, quickly issued temporary badges to Valentina and Miguel without asking too many questions. Xavier is on the top floor preparing for the press conference, Carolina informed them quietly as they moved through the crowded lobby. The announcement will be in the main auditorium on the ground floor in 30 minutes. Security is tight, but focused mainly on the entrances and the auditorium itself. We need to get to Xavier before he goes on stage, Miguel said. Once he's surrounded by cameras and people, it will be harder to approach him. They took the elevator to the executive floor, Carolina's press badge granting them access without question. The hallways were eerily quiet compared to the bustling lobby, most of the staff presumably involved in preparations for the big announcement. His office is at the end of the hall, Carolina whispered, pointing toward a set of double doors. There will be security. As they approached, they saw two men in suits standing outside the doors, earpieces indicating they were part of a professional security team. Valentina's mind raced, trying to formulate a plan to get past them. Before she could speak, the elevator behind them dinged and a group of people exited, staff carrying last-minute papers and equipment for the press conference. In the momentary confusion, Carolina seized the opportunity. "Excuse me," she called to the security guards, striding forward with purposeful confidence. "Mr. Mendez requested these documents for his presentation." She held up her press folder. "They just arrived, and he needs them immediately." The guards exchanged glances, clearly uncertain. "We weren't informed," one began. "Well, I'm informing you now," Carolina interrupted impatiently, "unless you want to be the one to tell Mr. Mendez why his presentation is missing critical information." The bluff worked. One of the guards knocked on the door, then opened it slightly. "Sir, there's a delivery for your presentation." "Send them in," came Xavier's voice from within, sounding irritated at the interruption. The guard stepped aside, allowing Carolina to enter with Valentina and Miguel close behind. As soon as they were inside, the guard closed the door, leaving them alone with Xavier Mendez. The office was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Rio. Xavier stood near his desk, reviewing notes. He looked up, annoyed, then froze as he recognized his visitors. For a moment, no one spoke. Xavier recovered first, his surprise giving way to a cold smile. "Subject 0, he said, his gaze fixed on Miguel. "How unexpected. I was told you were quite elusive." "My name is Miguel Oliveira," Miguel replied, his voice steady despite the rage Valentina could sense beneath his calm exterior. "Not Subject 0, not anymore." Xavier's gaze shifted to Valentina, his smile never reaching his eyes. "And Valentina Azevedo. I must say I'm surprised to see you in such company. I wasn't aware you two knew each other." "We were married 15 years ago," Valentina said coldly. "Before you kidnapped my husband and kept him prisoner for your experiments." Xavier chuckled, seemingly unperturbed by the accusation. "Is that what he told you? How dramatic. Miguel was a paid research subject who chose to leave our program prematurely, taking valuable company property with him." "Property?" Miguel's voice rose, in anger. "You mean my children? Human beings you created in a lab without consent?" Xavier moved toward his desk, pressing a button on his phone. "Security," he said calmly. "I need assistance in my office." "They won't come in time," Carolina said, stepping forward and revealing her press badge. "Carolina Freitas, Globo News. By now my team has received all the evidence, the videos of your illegal experiments, the financial records showing bribery of government officials, the medical files documenting your human rights violations." "It's over, Xavier." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Xavier's face, quickly masked by contempt. "Evidence? You mean fabricated files created by a desperate man?" He gestured dismissively toward Miguel. "No one will believe such obvious fraud. They'll believe the DNA tests," Valentina countered, showing that the twins' genetic material was harvested from Miguel during his captivity. "They'll believe the video recordings of your own meetings, where you discuss terminating subjects once they've served their purpose. And they'll believe me," Miguel added, stepping closer to Xavier, "when I testify about 15 years of captivity, of being used as a lab rat for your anti-aging research." Xavier's composure finally cracked, anger flashing in his eyes. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. This isn't just about anti-aging treatments or corporate profits. The genetic modification program is the future of humanity itself. The children, all the subjects, are part of something greater than any individual life." "They're not subjects," Valentina said fiercely. "They're people, our children. And whatever grand vision you think justifies your crimes, it ends today." The sound of footsteps in the hallway indicated security was approaching. Xavier's confidence returned, a smug smile spreading across his face. "It seems our time is up," he said. "I have a press conference to attend and you have a rather unpleasant meeting with security. I suggest you come quietly. Making a scene will only make things worse for you." The door opened and the two security guards entered, followed by two more men in suits who had the unmistakable bearing of law enforcement. "These are the intruders, officers," Xavier said to the newcomers. "They've been threatening me, making wild accusations." Xavier Mendez, one of the men, interrupted, pulling out a badge. "Federal police, you're under arrest for kidnapping, illegal human experimentation, bribery of government officials, and corporate espionage." Xavier's face went pale. "This is absurd. On whose authority?" "Mine," said a distinguished man who entered behind the officers. "Daniel Almeida, director of the Federal Police Special Crimes Unit. We've been building a case against you for months, Mr. Mendez. Today's evidence was the final piece we needed." Valentina felt a surge of relief and gratitude. Her contact in the Federal Police had come through after all. Carolina must have reached out to him as soon as she verified the evidence. Xavier's shock quickly gave way to cold calculation. "Whatever you think you know, it won't hold up in court. I have friends in higher places than you can imagine, Almeida." "Had friends," Daniel corrected him, "many of whom are also being arrested at this moment. Your network is collapsing, Mendez. It's over." As the officers moved to handcuff Xavier, he suddenly lunged toward his desk, reaching for a drawer. One of the officers tackled him before he could open it, pinning him to the ground. Check the drawer, Daniel instructed. The second officer opened it cautiously, revealing a handgun. Add attempted assault to the charges, Daniel said grimly. As Xavier was led away, still protesting and threatening legal action, Daniel turned to Valentina and Miguel. We'll need your full statements, of course, and we'll need to locate the children for their protection. They're safe, Valentina assured him. We'll bring them in when everything is secure. Daniel nodded in understanding. What Xavier was doing goes beyond anything we've seen before. The genetic experiments, the artificial wombs, the plan to create enhanced humans, it reads like science fiction. If you hadn't brought us this evidence, he might have succeeded. There's still the press conference, Carolina pointed out. Hundreds of reporters are waiting downstairs for Xavier's big announcement. Daniel smiled slightly. I think they're about to get a very different story than they expected. The scene in the auditorium was chaotic. Journalists who had come expecting to hear about a revolutionary anti-aging treatment instead witnessed the public arrest of one of Brazil's most powerful businessmen. Camera flashes exploded as Xavier was led through the crowd in handcuffs, his face a mask of fury and humiliation. Daniel Almeida took the stage to make a brief statement, explaining the nature of the charges against Xavier and Villanueva. He was careful not to mention Valentina, Miguel, or the twins by name, protecting their privacy, while still making it clear that Xavier's crimes included the kidnapping and exploitation of research subjects. Carolina, true to her word, had her exclusive story ready for the evening news. It was a masterpiece of investigative journalism, laying out the evidence against Xavier in clear, compelling terms, while also telling the human story at its heart. A husband and wife separated for 15 years, reunited against all odds, fighting to protect their children from a man who saw them as nothing more than experimental subjects. In the days that followed, the story dominated headlines nationwide and even internationally. Villanueva's stock collapsed as investors fled the scandal. Government investigations were launched into every aspect of Xavier's operations, revealing a web of corruption that extended into multiple agencies and institutions. For Valentina and Miguel, however, the most important outcome was much more personal. With Xavier in custody and the initial chaos of the arrests subsiding, they were finally able to return to the small village where Maria had taken the twins. The reunion was emotional, both parents clinging to their children with the relief of knowing they were truly safe at last. What happens now? Miguel asked as they sat together that evening, the twins sleeping peacefully nearby. Xavier has powerful allies. He might not stay in prison forever. Maybe not, Valentina acknowledged, but his reputation is destroyed, his company in ruins. Most importantly, the truth is out there now. He can't operate in the shadows anymore. And us? What about our future? Valentina took his hand, her expression thoughtful. I've been thinking about that. Beleza Eterna has research facilities, ethical ones, with some of the best scientists in the country. Your work on telomere regeneration, the real research, not Xavier's perverted version of it, could help a lot of people if developed properly, under ethical guidelines. Miguel looked surprised. You'd want me to continue that research after everything that happened? Science itself isn't evil, Valentina said softly. It's how people use it. Your research could lead to treatments for age-related diseases, improving quality of life for millions. It shouldn't die because one man tried to corrupt it. Miguel was silent for a moment, considering. It would mean going public with my identity, telling our story. Only as much as you're comfortable with, Valentina assured him. We control the narrative now, not Xavier. The idea took root, growing stronger as they discussed the possibilities. Valentina would restructure part of Beleza Eterna to create a new bioethics research division, with Miguel at its head. They would develop legitimate ethical applications of his original research, putting healing and helping people above profit. More importantly, they would do it together, rebuilding the life they should have had, creating a home and a future for their unique family. As night fell over the small village, Valentina stood by the window, watching the stars emerge once more. Miguel came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist just as he had done at the farmhouse, what felt like a lifetime ago. What are you thinking about? He asked, resting his chin on her shoulder. That rainy night, she replied softly. When I saw you on the street, how close I came to driving past, never knowing you were alive, never knowing about the twins. But you didn't drive past, Miguel reminded her. You stopped. You recognized me, even after 15 years. Valentina turned in his arms to face him. I would have recognized you anywhere in any lifetime, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Some connections can't be broken, not by time, not by distance, not even by someone as powerful as Xavier Mendez. Miguel kissed her then, a kiss filled with 15 years of longing and the promise of many more years together. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, witnesses to a love that had endured against impossible odds and to the beginning of a new chapter for the family that fate had tried and failed to keep apart. In the next room, Gabriel and Sophia slept peacefully, unaware of the extraordinary circumstances of their creation, unaware of the battles that had been fought for their future. Someday they would learn the truth about their origins, about the mother who never gave up hope and the father who risked everything to protect them. But for now they slept the innocent sleep of children who knew only that they were loved, completely and unconditionally, by parents who had defied the impossible to find each other again. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. 6. Months had passed since Xavier Mendez's arrest. The media frenzy had eventually died down, though the case remained a topic of fascination for the public. Xavier was being held without bail, deemed a flight risk due to his wealth and international connections. His trial was still months away, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. Valentina had spent these months balancing the needs of her family with the responsibility of running Belleza Eterna. The company had undergone significant changes, with a new bioethics research division established under Miguel's leadership. Their goal was to develop ethical applications of his telomere research that could help treat age-related diseases without crossing moral boundaries. The twins, now just over a year old, were flourishing. Gabriel had taken his first steps too, weeks earlier, his determined little face a picture of concentration, as he wobbled across the living room floor into Miguel's waiting arms. Sophia, not to be outdone, had started speaking simple words, Mama, Dada, and No being her current favorites. They had moved into a new home, a spacious property in a gated community with extensive security. Despite Xavier being behind, bars Valentina and Miguel remained cautious. They knew the reach of a man like Xavier Mendez could extend beyond prison walls, and the safety of their family remained their top priority. On this particular morning, Valentina sat in the sunroom of their home, a cup of coffee in hand, watching as Miguel played with the twins in the garden. The sight still filled her with wonder. This family she had never expected to have, this second chance at happiness that had come to her so unexpectedly on that rainy night. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. Their security guard, Mateo, spoke through the intercom. Ms. Azevedo, Daniel Almeida is here to see you. Valentina felt a flicker of concern. The federal police director rarely made personal visits unless the matter was urgent. Send him in, she instructed. Daniel entered moments later, his expression serious but not alarming. After exchanging greetings, they sat in the living room while Miguel continued to watch the twins outside. I apologize for coming unannounced, Daniel began, but we've received some information that you and Miguel should be aware of. About Xavier, Valentina guessed, tension creeping into her shoulders. Daniel nodded. Yes, his legal team is pursuing a new strategy. They're claiming that he genuinely believed his research was for the greater good of humanity, and that any ethical violations were justified by the potential benefits to public health. Valentina scoffed. That's absurd. The evidence, clearly, shows he was motivated by profit and power, not altruism. I agree, Daniel said, but they've hired some of the best lawyers in the country and they're working hard to reshape the narrative. They're also trying to minimize Xavier's personal involvement, shifting blame to overzealous researchers who allegedly acted without his full knowledge. No one who has seen the videos would believe that, Valentina pointed out. Xavier is clearly directing everything in those meetings. True, but they're challenging the admissibility of some of that evidence, claiming it was obtained illegally. Daniel leaned forward. Which brings me to the main reason for my visit. The prosecutor wants Miguel to testify at the trial. His first-hand account of his captivity would be powerful evidence that the jury couldn't ignore. Valentina felt her heart sink. Testifying would mean Miguel reliving the trauma of those 15 years, exposing himself to public scrutiny, and potentially putting himself in the crosshairs of Xavier's remaining allies. I should get Miguel, she said, rising to call him from the garden. When Miguel joined them, Daniel repeated his request. Miguel listened silently, his face unreadable as he absorbed the information. I need time to think about this, he finally said. Daniel nodded in understanding. Of course, but I should mention that there's something else. Our investigation has uncovered additional facilities owned by Bionueva, hidden behind shell companies. We believe there may be other research subjects still being held against their will. Miguel's head snapped up, his eyes widening. Other people like me? We think so, Daniel confirmed grimly. We're conducting raids based on the information we have, but the facilities are well hidden. Your testimony, and any additional details you might remember about Xavier's operation, could help us find these people before it's too late. After Daniel left, Valentina and Miguel sat in silence for a long moment, each lost in their own thoughts. The twins had been put down for their nap, the house quiet except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bird call from the garden. I have to do it, Miguel finally said, his voice firm despite the fear Valentina could see in his eyes. If there are others out there, still suffering as I did, I can't turn my back on them. Valentina moved to sit beside him on the couch, taking his hand in hers. I know, she said softly. I wouldn't expect anything less from you, but Miguel, are you ready to relive all of that in public? To have your story dissected in the media? To face Xavier in court? Miguel's hand tightened around hers. No, he admitted. I'm not ready. I don't think I'll ever be ready. But sometimes the right thing to do isn't the easy thing. Valentina leaned against him, drawing strength from his presence even as she offered him her own. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. We'll face it together. Miguel wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her closer. When I was in that facility, I used to dream about you, he confessed quietly. About being rescued, about us having a life together again. But I never dared to hope it would actually happen. He kissed the top of her head. You're my miracle, Valentina. You and the twins. Knowing I have you gives me the courage to do this. As the days passed, they prepared for what was to come. Miguel worked with the prosecution team, providing detailed statements about his time in captivity. He remembered names, dates, faces, information that helped authorities identify and locate 3 additional facilities where other subjects were being held. The raids that followed freed 7 people, men and women who had been held against their will for various periods, all with genetic anomalies that Xavier's researchers had been studying. The public outrage that followed these discoveries strengthened the case against Xavier, making his lawyer's greater good defense increasingly difficult to maintain. 2 weeks before the trial was set to begin, Valentina received an unexpected call from Carolina Freitas. Xavier wants to meet with you, the journalist said without preamble. What? Valentina was stunned. Why would he want to see me? And why are you the one telling me this? His lawyers contacted me, knowing I have a connection to you, Carolina explained. They're proposing a deal. Xavier will plead guilty to reduce charges in exchange for certain considerations. What kind of considerations? Valentina asked suspiciously. That's what he wants to discuss with you directly. My guess is it has something to do with the children. Valentina's protective instincts flared instantly. The twins are not a bargaining chip. They're not up for discussion. I told his lawyers as much, Carolina assured her. But they insisted he has information that you and Miguel would want to hear. Information about the twins' genetic modifications that could affect their future health. Valentina felt a cold knot of fear form in her stomach. Is he threatening them? Not exactly, Carolina said, carefully. It's more like he's suggesting there are medical details about their condition that only he fully understands, details that might be important as they grow older. After discussing it with Miguel, They reluctantly agreed to the meeting. It would take place at the Federal Detention Center, where Xavier was being held, under strict supervision. They arranged for Carlos and Maria to watch the twins, not wanting them anywhere near the facility. The detention center was a stark, imposing building on the outskirts of Rio. Valentina and Miguel were led through multiple security checkpoints, before being shown to a small bare room with a table and 4 chairs. Xavier was already there, flanked by a guard and a woman who introduced herself as his attorney. Xavier looked different from the powerful businessman they had confronted 6 months earlier. Prison had aged him visibly, his silver hair duller, his posture less commanding, but his eyes still held the same calculating intelligence, the same unwavering belief in his own superiority. Valentina, Miguel, he greeted them with a nod, as if they were meeting for a business discussion rather than in a prison visiting room. "Thank you for coming. We're here because you claim to have information about our children," Valentina said coldly, getting straight to the point. "What is it?" Xavier smiled thinly. "Direct as always. Very well." He leaned forward slightly. "The twins are unique, not just because of the genetic modifications we made, but because of the way those modifications interact with the natural mutation in Miguel's DNA. We were never able to fully predict the long-term effects." "What are you saying?" Miguel demanded, his voice tense. "I'm saying that as they grow, they may develop unusual abilities. Enhanced intelligence, certainly. That was a primary goal of the project. But also potentially enhanced physical capabilities, sensory perception, cellular regeneration beyond what we initially targeted." Xavier's eyes gleamed with the pride of a creator discussing his work. "They are, in many ways, the crowning achievement of my life's research." Valentina felt disgusted by the way he spoke of Gabriel and Sophia, as if they were lab specimens rather than children. "They are not your achievement," she said sharply. "They are our children, not your experiments." Xavier waved a dismissive hand. "Semantics. The point is, they will need specialized medical care as they develop, care that only someone with intimate knowledge of their genetic makeup can provide." "Is that your offer?" Miguel asked, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "You'll provide medical guidance for our children in exchange for a reduced sentence." "That's part of it," Xavier's attorney interjected smoothly. "Mr. Mendez is prepared to plead guilty to certain charges, sparing the state the expense and uncertainty of a trial. In exchange, he would continue his research under strict ethical supervision, focusing specifically on monitoring and supporting the twins' development." "You must be joking," Valentina said incredulously. "You think we would ever allow you near our children again?" "Think practically, Valentina," Xavier urged. "Your maternal instincts are admirable, but consider what's at stake. Gabriel and Sophia are not like other children. As they grow, they may face challenges that no ordinary physician will understand. They may develop in ways that confuse or frighten you." "We'll manage," Miguel said firmly. Xavier shrugged. "Perhaps. But there's something else you should know." He paused, clearly enjoying the moment of power he still held. "The genetic modifications we made were complex, interacting with multiple systems. There's a small but not insignificant chance of complications as they mature, particularly during adolescence, when hormonal changes may trigger unexpected genetic expressions." Valentina felt her heart rate accelerate. "What kind of complications?" "Nothing. Life-threatening," Xavier assured her, though his casual tone did little to alleviate her concern. "But potentially disruptive. Cognitive processing speeds that outpace emotional development, physical abilities that require careful management. Without proper guidance, they could struggle to integrate these aspects of themselves." Miguel's hand found Valentina's under the table, squeezing it reassuringly. "If that happens," he said calmly, "we'll find ethical researchers who can help us. Beleza Eterna employs some of the best scientific minds in the country, none of whom understand the specific modifications we made," Xavier countered. "The research was compartmentalized for security reasons. Only I have the complete picture." The attorney slid a document across the table. "This is our proposed agreement. Mr. Mendez pleads guilty to reduced charges. He serves his sentence in a minimum security facility with access to a research laboratory. He provides ongoing consultation." regarding the twins' development under whatever supervision you deem appropriate. In return, his cooperation is considered during sentencing. Valentina didn't even glance at the paper. "No," she said simply. "We're not making deals with you, Xavier. You'll face trial for what you've done. To Miguel, to the other subjects, to our children." Xavier's expression hardened. "Consider carefully before you refuse. This isn't just about punishment or justice. It's about what's best for Gabriel and Sophia. They are extraordinary children with extraordinary potential. Don't let your personal feelings toward me deprive them of the guidance they may need." "Our feelings toward you aren't personal," Miguel replied, standing up. "They're based on your actions, the way you treated human beings as experimental subjects, the lives you destroyed in pursuit of your ambitions. We'll take our chances. Without your help." As they prepared to leave, Xavier made one final attempt. "The data," he said quickly. "All of my research, all of the records pertaining to the twins' genetic structure, and the modifications we made. If you won't accept my direct involvement, at least take the data." For their sake, Valentina and Miguel exchanged glances, silently, communicating in the way they had developed over the past months. Finally, Miguel turned back to Xavier. "Have your lawyers send the complete files to the prosecutor's office," he instructed. "Every detail, every record. They can verify it's comprehensive and pass it to us. But understand this, it changes nothing about the case against you, and we will have independent experts review everything before we trust a word of it." Xavier nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth as if he had achieved some small victory. "Of course, I would expect nothing less." As they left the detention center, Valentina felt a weight on her shoulders that hadn't been there before. "Do you think he was telling the truth?" she asked Miguel once they were in the car. "About the twins potentially having complications?" Miguel sighed heavily. "I think he was telling a version of the truth, one calculated to serve his interests. Xavier has always been manipulative. He knows that threatening our children's well-being is the one lever he might still have over us. But what if he's right? What if they do need specialized care that only he understands?" "Then we'll figure it out," Miguel said with determination. "We have resources, Valentina. We have ethical scientists who can analyze whatever data Xavier provides. Most importantly, we have each other, and we have love for our children that Xavier could never comprehend." Valentina nodded, drawing strength from his certainty. "You're right. We've overcome so much already. We'll face whatever comes next together." When they arrived home, they found the twins napping peacefully under Maria's watchful eye. Seeing their innocent faces, their perfect tiny hands and feet, Valentina felt a renewed resolve. Whatever challenges Gabriel and Sophia might face in the future, due to Xavier's interference in their creation, they would never lack for love, support, or protection. The trial of Xavier Mendes became one of the most closely watched legal proceedings in Brazil's history. The courtroom was packed each day with journalists, legal observers, and members of the public, captivated by the sensational nature of the case. Miguel's testimony came on the third day. He spoke for hours, describing in precise, unflinching detail his 15 years of captivity, the endless medical procedures, the dehumanizing treatment, the psychological torture of being told his wife was dead. The courtroom was utterly silent as he recounted how he had discovered the existence of the twins, how Lucia had risked everything to help him escape with them. When asked why Xavier had targeted him specifically, Miguel explained about the natural mutation in his DNA that slowed the aging process at the cellular level. Xavier didn't just want to study this mutation, Miguel testified. He wanted to own it, control it, and ultimately profit from it. When I wouldn't voluntarily participate in his research, he took me by force. Xavier's defense. Team tried to discredit Miguel's testimony, suggesting his memories might be confused after years of sedation, or that he had been a willing participant who later changed his mind. But the evidence, particularly the video recordings showing Xavier discussing Miguel as Subject Zero and planning his termination, made these arguments fall flat. The other rescued research subjects also testified, each story more harrowing than the last. A woman who had been held for 8 years because of a rare immune system anomaly. A man kept in isolation for a decade due to his unusual brain structure. Each account built upon the last, creating an undeniable picture of systematic abuse and exploitation. Throughout the trial, Valentina divided her time between supporting Miguel in court and caring for the twins at home. The stress took its toll on both of them. Miguel had nightmares about his captivity, while Valentina found herself constantly checking the security system, vigilant for any threat to their family. On the final day of the trial, after weeks of testimony and evidence presentation, Xavier was given the opportunity to address the court. He rose slowly, every eye in the room fixed upon him. "What I did," he began, his voice steady, "was in pursuit of knowledge that could transform human existence. Extend life, enhance our capabilities, free us from the limitations that have bound our species since the beginning of time." He paused, scanning the courtroom. "History is full of visionaries who were condemned by their contemporaries, only to be vindicated by future generations. I believe I will be among them." The judge's expression remained impassive as Xavier continued. "I regret that my methods have been characterized as cruel or unethical. From my perspective, they were necessary sacrifices for a greater purpose." The subjects, he corrected himself, perhaps sensing the negative reaction to his terminology, the individuals who participated in my research, whether voluntarily or not, have contributed to advancements that will eventually benefit all of humanity. Valentina felt Miguel tense beside her. She placed a hand on his arm, steadying him as Xavier went on. "Miguel Oliveira possesses a genetic variation that could hold the key to extending human lifespan by decades, perhaps eventually centuries. His children," Xavier's gaze shifted to where Valentina and Miguel sat, "represent the next evolution of that potential. Yes, I took extreme measures to explore this possibility, but I ask you to consider, if the result is a treatment that could save millions from the ravages of aging and disease, would those measures not be justified?" When Xavier finally sat down, the courtroom remained silent for several long moments. His lack of remorse, his continued belief in the righteousness of his actions, had made a deeper impression than any expression of contrition could have. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours before returning their verdict, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Xavier to 30 years in prison without possibility of parole, his assets confiscated, his research facilities permanently shut down. As Xavier was led away in handcuffs, he locked eyes with Miguel and Valentina one final time. There was no defeat in his gaze, only a cold certainty that suggested he still believed in the rightness of his cause, still believed that someday the world would see things his way. "It's over," Valentina whispered to Miguel as they left the courtroom, reporters shouting questions that they ignored. "For now," Miguel replied, his expression troubled. "But men like Xavier don't give up easily, even from behind bars." His words proved prophetic. Just 3 weeks after the sentencing, they received news that stunned them. Xavier Mendez had been found dead in his cell, apparently from a heart attack. The prison medical examiner confirmed it was from natural causes, stating that the stress of the trial and imprisonment had likely exacerbated an existing heart condition. Valentina and Miguel received the news with mixed emotions, relief that the threat Xavier posed was truly over, but also lingering questions about the research data he had promised to provide. Data that might prove crucial to understanding the twins' unique genetic makeup. To their surprise, a package arrived from Xavier's attorneys the day after his death was announced. It contained multiple hard drives and paper files, the complete records of the research related to Miguel and the twins, as Xavier had promised. Accompanying the materials was a handwritten note. "Valentina and Miguel, by the time you receive this, I will be gone. Despite our differences, I believe we shared one common goal, the well-being of the children. They are extraordinary in ways you have yet to discover. The enclosed data will help you understand and guide them as they develop. I remain convinced that history will validate my methods, if not in your lifetime, then perhaps in theirs. The future belongs to those who dare to transcend limitations, a Wauchow quality I recognize in Gabriel and Sophia, even at their young age. Consider this my final contribution to their journey. Xavier Mendez." The note left Valentina unsettled. Even in death, Xavier maintained his belief in the rightness of his actions. But more concerning was his continued interest in the twins, his certainty about their extraordinary nature. "What do we do with all this?" she asked Miguel as they surveyed the massive amount of data Xavier had left them. "We have it analyzed by people we trust," Miguel decided. Dr. Camila Santos at the university has expertise in genetic research and impeccable ethical standards. And Dr. Renato Lima at Beleza Eterna's research division, he's been helping me understand my own genetic anomaly. Over the following months, the data was carefully reviewed and organized. Much of it confirmed what they already knew. The twins carried an enhanced version of Miguel's longevity mutation, along with modifications intended to boost cognitive development and cellular regeneration. But there were also surprises, subtle alterations to neural pathways that might enhance learning, modifications to immune system functions that could offer superior disease resistance. The good news, Dr. Santos explained during a consultation, is that we've found no evidence of dangerous instabilities or health risks in these modifications. The changes are remarkably precise and well integrated. Xavier was many things, but he was also a brilliant geneticist. "And the twins?" Valentina asked, the question that had been weighing on her mind since their meeting with Xavier. "Will they be normal? Will they be able to live ordinary lives?" Dr. Santos considered the question carefully. "They will be healthy and they will be themselves, whatever that means for each of them as individuals. But normal is a complicated concept. They may develop abilities or traits that set them apart from their peers. They may age more slowly, learn more quickly, process information differently. But these differences don't have to define or limit them." How do we prepare them for that? Miguel wondered aloud. How do we help them navigate a world where they might be fundamentally different from everyone around them? "With love," Dr. Santos said simply. "With acceptance of who they are, whatever that turns out to be, and with the understanding that being different isn't the same as being alone." 5 years passed. Valentina had restructured Beleza Eterna to focus more on health and wellness products alongside its cosmetics line, with an emphasis on ethical research and development. Miguel led the company's bioethics division, working with other scientists to develop treatments for age-related diseases based on his original research. The twins were now 6 years old and starting school, a decision that had caused Valentina and Miguel considerable anxiety. How would they adapt to a classroom environment? Would their differences become apparent? Would they be accepted by other children? They had chosen a progressive private school with small class sizes and a philosophy of individualized education. So far, the experience had been positive. Gabriel and Sophia were bright, enthusiastic learners, making friends and participating fully in school activities. If they were learning a bit more quickly than their classmates, it wasn't dramatically obvious. On a warm Saturday afternoon, Valentina sat on the patio of their home, watching as Miguel taught the twins to ride their bicycles on the driveway. Gabriel approached the task with characteristic determination, getting back on each time he fell, refusing help until he mastered the skill on his own. Sophia took a more experimental approach, testing different techniques and laughing even when she crashed. Valentina marveled at how distinct their personalities were, how clearly they were becoming their own people despite sharing identical genes. Gabriel was thoughtful, methodical, with a quiet intensity that reminded her of Miguel. Sophia was exuberant, creative, always ready with a question or observation that surprised the adults around her. They were extraordinary children, but not in the ways Xavier had envisioned. Their extraordinary qualities weren't their genetic modifications or potential abilities. They were their kindness, their curiosity, their capacity for joy and love. As she watched them, Valentina reflected on the unlikely journey that had brought them to this moment. A rainy night, a chance encounter, a recognition that transcended 15 years of separation. The twins, created under such unusual circumstances, now the center of their world. Xavier, whose evil intentions had inadvertently led to this family's formation. Miguel looked up from helping Sophia adjust her helmet and caught Valentina's eye across the driveway. He smiled. That same warm smile that had captivated her when they first met, now deepened by shared struggles and triumphs. She smiled back, feeling the familiar surge of love and gratitude that had become the foundation of their rebuilt life. Later, that evening after the twins were in bed, Miguel and Valentina sat on the porch swing, enjoying the quiet and each other's company. The tropical night was warm, filled with the sounds of cicadas and distant music from a neighbor's party. "I got a call from Dr. Santos today," Miguel said, breaking the comfortable silence. "She's been reviewing the latest checkups for the twins." "And?" Valentina asked, a hint of anxiety creeping into her voice despite years of normal results. "Everything is perfect," Miguel assured her. "Their development is advanced for their age, but within what she considers a natural range for their unique genetic makeup. She said, we should expect their cognitive abilities to continue accelerating as they get older, but there's no reason for concern." Valentina relaxed against him. "Do you ever wonder what they'll be like as adults? What they might accomplish?" "All the time," Miguel admitted. "But I try not to project too much onto them. Whatever they become, whatever they choose to do with their lives and their abilities, I want it to be their choice, not our expectations or Xavier's legacy." "I agree," Valentina said softly. "I just want them to be happy, to know they're loved, for who they are, not what they can do." Miguel wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her closer. "They know. You're an amazing mother, Valentina. The way you've embraced parenthood after it was thrust upon you so unexpectedly. I'm in awe of you every day." "We're both learning as we go," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "But I think we're doing okay." The porch swing rocked gently as they sat together, contemplating the future that stretched before them. A future filled with unknowns but also with possibilities. Whatever challenges the twins might face as they grew, whatever unique path their extraordinary genetics might set them on, they would face it as a family. Inside the house, the twins slept peacefully, in their rooms, their dreams as yet untouched by the complexities of their origins. In time, they would learn the full story of Miguel's captivity, of Valentina's search, of their unconventional creation, and the man who had orchestrated it all. But they would learn it surrounded by love and support, with the understanding that their story began not in a laboratory, but on a rainy night when a woman stopped her car to help a stranger, who turned out to be the love she had never forgotten. And perhaps most importantly, they would learn that what made them truly special wasn't the modified genes in their DNA. It was the unbreakable bonds of family that had been forged through loss, reunion, and unconditional love. As the night deepened around them, Valentina and Miguel continued to rock gently on the porch swing, holding on to each other and the life they had reclaimed. The rain that had once brought them back together had long since passed, but its secret gift remained: a second chance, a family, reunited, and a love that had proven stronger than time, distance, and the machinations of a man who had never understood that true power lay not in controlling life, but in cherishing it. "Tell us another story, Mom," Gabriel requested, his eyes bright with interest despite the late hour. At 12 years old, he had Miguel's thoughtful demeanor and Valentina's determination. "Yes, please," echoed Sophia, looking up from the book she had been reading. "The one about how you found Dad in the rain." Valentina exchanged a warm glance with Miguel across the living room. It was their children's favorite bedtime story, though they had long since learned it was no fairy tale but their own family history. "Well," Valentina began, settling onto the couch between the twins, "it was a cold, rainy evening in São Paulo. I was in my car, waiting at a red light, thinking about work as usual." As she recounted the story once more, the chance encounter, the recognition, the discovery of the twins, Valentina watched the familiar wonder spread across her children's faces. Even knowing the outcome, they were captivated by the tale of how their family had found each other against impossible odds. "And that's why we always say," Miguel concluded from his armchair, "that some connections can't be broken, not by time or distance, not even by someone as powerful as Xavier Mendes." Gabriel and Sophia nodded solemnly. At 12, they understood more about their origins than they had as small children. They knew about Miguel's captivity, about Xavier's experiments, about the genetic modifications that made them unique. But they also understood that these facts were just part of their story, not its defining feature. "Do you think he was right?" Sophia asked suddenly, looking between her parents. "Xavier, I mean, about us being extraordinary?" Valentina felt her heart tighten at the question. It was one they had anticipated, but hoped would come later, when the twins were older and more secure in their identities. "You are extraordinary," Valentina said carefully. "But not because of anything Xavier did. You're extraordinary because of who you are. Your kindness, your curiosity, your hearts. Those things can't be engineered in a lab." Gabriel, always the more introspective of the two, frowned slightly. "But our abilities, the way we learn so quickly, the way we hardly ever get sick, that's because of what he did to our genes, isn't it?" Miguel moved to sit on the coffee table in front of them, meeting his son's troubled gaze directly. "Yes, there are aspects of your physical and cognitive abilities that were influenced by the genetic modifications. But what makes those abilities meaningful, what you choose to do with them, how you use them to engage with the world, that comes from you, not from Xavier's lab." Sophia considered this, twisting a strand of her dark hair around her finger thoughtfully. "I think I understand. It's like having naturally good eyesight doesn't make you an artist. You still have to learn to see beauty and create it yourself." "Exactly," Valentina smiled, impressed by her daughter's insight. "Your abilities are tools, not your identity. And you never have to use those tools in ways that make you uncomfortable," Miguel added firmly. "If you ever feel pressured by us, by teachers, by anyone, to be more or different than you want to be, you tell us. Your happiness and well-being come first. Always." The conversation continued late into the evening, the twins asking questions that revealed their growing awareness of their unique situation. How many other children like them existed? None that they knew of, though the possibility couldn't be ruled out. Would they live longer than normal people? The data suggested they might, but no one could say for certain. Did other people's parents love them as much as Miguel and Valentina loved them? Just as much, but perhaps in different ways. When the twins finally went to bed, Valentina and Miguel remained in the living room, both emotionally drained but relieved that the conversation had gone as well as it had. "They're handling it better than I expected," Valentina admitted. "I was worried they'd feel like experiments, like they weren't fully human." "They know they're loved," Miguel said simply. "That's the foundation that lets them process everything else. And they have each other, a twin who understands exactly what they're going through." Valentina nodded, grateful once again for the bond between Gabriel and Sophia. Though different in many ways, they shared an unshakable connection, supporting each other through every challenge and celebration. As they prepared for bed themselves, Valentina paused by the window, looking out at the starry night sky. 12 years had passed since that rainy night when fate had brought Miguel back into her life. 12 years of rebuilding, healing, and creating a family life she had never dared to dream was possible. There had been challenges along the way. The twins' accelerated learning abilities had required educational adjustments. Their unusual immune systems had confounded the family doctor, and there had been moments of fear when their differences became noticeable to others, a wound healing too quickly, a mathematical insight far beyond their years. But through it all, they had remained a family first and foremost. The scientific aspects of the twins' development were monitored and supported, but never allowed to overshadow the normal experiences of childhood: friendships, hobbies, skinned knees, and birthday parties. Miguel came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, just as he had done countless times over the years. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, resting his chin on her shoulder. "How lucky we are," Valentina replied, leaning back against him. "Despite everything, all the pain, all the years apart, we found our way to this life, to these amazing children. Luck, fate, or perhaps something else entirely," Miguel mused. "Whatever it was, I'm grateful for it every day." As they stood together, watching the night sky, Valentina reflected on the unlikely journey that had brought them to this moment of peace and fulfillment. The rain that had once revealed a secret reunion had given way to clear skies and a future bright with possibility, not just for Valentina and Miguel, but for the extraordinary children who represented both their deepest loss and their greatest joy. The story of their family, begun in such unusual circumstances, would continue to unfold in ways they couldn't predict. But one thing remained certain: the love that had defied 15 years of separation, that had recognized a familiar face on a rainy street corner, that had embraced two unexpected children with open hearts, that love was strong enough to face whatever the future might hold. And in the end, that was the only certainty they needed.